Oh, oh, sorry. Did you want me to turn my phone a certain way
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you can
or
turn it like just to the
turn it?
side a bit. Yeah, this
Yeah,
should be
yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hold on one sec.
There we go.
All right, cool, cool, cool.
But yeah, awesome, man. Great to have you on Bowks Talking Bouts today. Big fight coming up
Yeah.
here with Mario Pinto on March 1st. Like, when did the discourse really, ramp up to get this Mario Pinto fight locked in?
Yeah, so I was actually in line to fight somebody else. So I was already in fight camp, training in South Florida at American Top Team when I got word that my original opponent got hurt, and then Mario Pinto will be filling in. So I probably got that probably about 6 or 7 weeks ago. So yeah, obviously, I mean, didn't really change that much. We had plenty of time to prepare for him and what he brings to the table, and I'm excited to showcase what I've learned on American Top Team and just how much I've improved my skill set.
That's interesting. So, are you predominantly at American Top Team now, like not so much at Xtreme Couture as of late?
So yeah, so it's wild, right? Because I wanted to go to Extreme Couture was my gym, and then unfortunately, I couldn't get out to Las Vegas for this camp. So then, staying in Jacksonville, Florida, American Top Team was only about a 4 hour drive for me. So went down south, man. Uh, got a nice little Airbnb. With a sweet old immigrant lady that I shared it with, and yeah, man, that was my house, and that was my place for 6, 7 weeks or whatever.
Okay, what was preventing you from getting out to Vegas there and everything like that?
So my original opponent was actually training at the same gym I was training at Extreme. Yeah.
I guess that's yeah. I guess that's kind of something that is part and parcel with training at like such a world-renowned gym. Like invariably, that's gonna probably happen at a certain point. So fair enough.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like out of respect to him in that gym too, I mean, it's been done before where you can kind of train in the same gym, but like we train with the same people and everything, man. So I just thought it was better. He had been there longer. So I figured, you know what, let me just go down to South Florida, man, and get ready to go there. And then when he got he got injured and everything, then it was like, well, American Top Team's already given me so much. They opened their doors to me. So I decided to finish out my camp there.
And who would you say you were predominantly working with there? Because obviously ATT is a powerhouse gym for all weight
Yeah.
categories, but I feel like especially so at heavyweight in a
Yeah.
sense. Like who have you mostly been working with at ATT?
Everybody, man. Obviously Junior Dos Santos, Thiago Santos, Rizvin, who's going to be fighting Curtis Blaydes coming up here pretty soon. Um, yeah, man, there's just been a lot of guys there. There's so many, and it's kind of funny because I'm kind of like the outlier, right? Like I'm the American, because they all speak Portuguese, and then we got a couple Russians up in there as well. So it was weird being in a gym speaking English, like kind of being like the black sheep of the bunch, but they all embraced me, man. Got great work with all of them, and yeah, man, I'm excited to showcase what I've learned.
Speaking of things you've learned, you pick up a bit of Portuguese at all, or not so much?
No, they were trying to crack jokes like I should learn some because then that could be kind of an advantage, if they're in the corner and they're saying stuff in Portuguese. But man, I'm so busy as it is. Unfortunately, I haven't got back to Rosetta Stone yet to learn Portuguese. So maybe after this fight's done, and I start my next camp up, maybe I can start learning some Portuguese then.
Yeah, fair enough, man. And I mean, so much to, talk about with this upcoming fight and seems like a lot of recent developments, but also in
Yeah,
a sense, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on the last one because it seemed like such a massive win for you. Like I saw the Instagram post talking about proving the doubters, or rather,
yeah,
it's not about proving the doubters wrong, it's proving the ones who believe in you right, which is such a great mindset and just what a
yeah.
comprehensive win. So I guess what were your main takeaways from that Robelis Despaigne performance?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you talk about pressure, when you talk about the stakes being the highest, I was essentially fighting for my job. That was the last fight of my contract. If I lose that fight, I'm out of the UFC, and that dream may have been over. Not to say I still would have kept fighting because I love fighting, so I would have fought regardless, but my time in the UFC might have been done. So there was definitely a lot on the line, and that was my first time really like nothing against Jacksonville, man, because that's my home and I love training there. But that was my first time like going to Xtreme Couture, training with a bunch of high level guys, kind of experiencing what a true fight camp was. And this will be my second experience now at American Top Team in Coconut Creek. But what I take away from it, man, is, I think a lot of times people build up a lot of animosity and a lot of I don't want to say hate, but they build up a lot of frustration to what they see online in terms of comments, in terms of people doubting them wrong. And yeah, obviously I got my fair share of doubters in my DMs, and I was gonna get knocked out and I was gonna get beat. And I think even the odds in Vegas kind of reflected that a little bit as well. But I just think it goes to show you, man, just what I'm all about and how I live my life. I just take it as it goes, man. I understand that the internet, it's not a real place, so I don't put too much stake into it. What I'm worried about is uh, I'm not worried about the opinions of people I have no idea who they are. All I'm worried about is the opinions of the people that I train with, my family, my friends, and those that I hold close to me. So I think it was just, I had to go through that experience to showcase like, hey, I know what I'm capable of. Despite what people say about me, I know what I can do in this sport. And I think I kind of showcased a little bit of that against Robelis, and I'm excited to showcase even more of that this Saturday.
Yeah, I guess by that you mean just like total, I guess, growth in the overall skill set. Like maybe not necessarily the same specific like game plan or methodology in an exact way, but maybe just the
Yeah.
skills that have been accrued since the last fight.
No, of course, man. I mean, and that's the biggest thing. Like, I train year round, I think with this sport, it has to be a lifestyle, and I've completely embraced that. So, I'm training every single day, and I'm still like, yeah, I'm 37 years old, but I think when you watch me move, when you watch me move around everything, I don't look like a 37-year-old, right? I think that's just in terms of taking care of my body, what I eat, what I drink, and how I prepare for fights. So, yeah, man, it's this Saturday is another opportunity to I think showcase the people that believe in me, why they believe in me, and if you want to hate, if you want to doubt me, man, more power to you. I really don't got time for you.
Yeah, because I don't know, like I don't know you super well, but just even
Yeah,
like off the last conversation we had, like I guess the idea of you being seen by like a betting line, for instance, as like an underdog, like I don't get the vibe that that would really, I don't know, inspire you or affect you one way or the other. So just love that
yeah.
that mindset was in the Instagram post that you mentioned there. I guess like kind of creating some potential connective tissue between the fights though, because I thought it was cool that you got to have your son in attendance for the first
Yeah,
time for your last fight. Is he going to be there for this Mario Pinto fight?
Ronan's gonna be there as well, man. Yeah, and that was really my first time that he got to see me fight, and it was kind of wild because, and I've said this before, I think through my career and everything, obviously, life happens to you, right? You lose people, people walk away, and you go through ups and downs of life. And at one of my lowest moments of my life, I would say, is when my son pulled me out of, of a depression, of feeling really down on myself. And I don't think he even meant to, real quick, the story goes. So I was in Australia and I lost my fight to Justin Tafa. Get back from Australia. Unfortunately, in my personal life, it didn't work out, and went through a separation right after that. Had to move out, had to find a new place to live and everything. So I'm just going through a whole bunch of stuff, and then obviously I lost some people very close to me that helped raise me. So it was it was a lot at once. And I take my son to this movie called Five Nights at Freddy's. Are you familiar with it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Not my thing, right? But my son wanted to see it. It's a video game. So I'm like, yeah, dude, I got you, man. No worries. And it was PG-13. I'm thinking PG-13 looks a little eerie, but we'll be all right. At the time, he was 8 years old. So we go see the movie. And dude, it's violent. It's scary. I'm like, I might get like the worst dad of the year award because now like he's gonna be traumatized because I remember being his age, watching Alien, watching, Halloween and being freaked out, being afraid of the dark and everything. So we go see the movie. I put my head down. I'm like, dude, man, I take pride in being a great father, and I may have dropped the ball here a little bit. So then we get home, I put him to bed, and I'm like, hey man, what we saw was kind of it was a lot. Are you okay? And he's like, yeah, why wouldn't I be okay? And I'm like, well, dude, we saw a giant cupcake eat a guy's stomach. We saw a bunch of crazy things. I'm just making sure, like, mentally you're okay, and it's dark out, and because I remember being that age. And he turned to me, he said, I'm always gonna be okay because you're my dad and you're like the toughest dude that I know. So why wouldn't I be okay? And as soon as he said that, man, my whole life changed. My whole life changed because then I realized of what really mattered, whose opinions I really needed to care about, and who I needed to fight for. And it was that moment where everything changed. So yeah, it was really cool having him at that last fight. He'll be at this next one, going through the media day with me and everything. And I used to always say like I never wanted to have anybody come with me on this journey because it's a journey of up and downs. And then the downs get low. And I don't ever want to feel anybody like to have that burden where it's like you have to go through this loss with me, right? I never wanted that. So I always kind of kept to myself. This journey was my journey alone. Everybody else can stay where they're at. You celebrate if I win and don't worry if I lose. And then when my son said that, I started to realize like it's okay to let people in. It's okay to take people on that journey with you because they're going to celebrate the ups. And then even though you're worried about the downs as well, they're going to be there to support you and pick you back up again. So that's why my son's here. That's why my son will keep on being in my corner, not in my corner, but like at the fights, going through this whole process because I can't do it without him.
I mean, that's just so incredible. I mean, such a powerful kind of sentiment for sure, man. And
Mhm.
just, I was kind of rewatching your post-fight speech after the win where you
Yeah,
pointedly
yeah.
gave the focus to your son. Just everything you had going on into that. I mean, you seem like a guy who is very measured. Like I would imagine that would be a pretty big cathartic moment, just what was going on in your personal life and,
Yeah.
your son being there and getting your first UFC win, like so many different emotions, but you seemed so composed and locked in. Like, is that like a very conscious thing on your part, or are you just a very measured
Yes.
person anyway? Or yeah.
No, I mean, I think, if you know my story, I played football before fighting. And when I was a football player, I was a very emotional guy. And that was a good thing and a bad thing, right? Through the process of MMA and just learning and going through the losses and just kind of going through life and what life had to throw at me. And obviously therapy is a big thing as well, but I really take pride in, um, mental preparation. I take pride in meditation and just making sure that your mind's where it needs to be because your mind's the most powerful weapon. I mean, God blessed me with a lot of athleticism, power, and strength. But if your mind isn't there, it doesn't really matter. And I'm really starting to realize that now as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm always practicing, whether it's meditation, whether it's taking 20 minutes of just decompressing, things like that, positive talk to yourself. There's a bunch of things that you can do, right? But it starts with your mind and then it goes outward. So I do take great pride in it, and that's another thing that MMA has afforded me. It's made me realize that stuff. So that's one of my draws to the sport, man. Is that when I got in here, I was a certain type of person, and now that I've been in here for whatever 8, 9, 10 years of fighting, it's made me a different person, and it's made me a different person for the better.
Well, that's so great, man. I love to hear stuff like that. I guess, like, in talking about the fact that this opponent was kind of like a switch up in a sense, like you were kind of
Mhm.
preparing for someone else and then Pinto came in the picture. Like, what are your thoughts on what he's been able to showcase so far? Because he kind of had that come up on the Levels Fight League circuit and then got that Contender Series win in
Yeah, yeah.
October. Like, yeah, what are your thoughts on the skills and the resume of Mario Pinto from what you've
Yeah,
seen?
yeah. I mean, obviously, when you talk about the size and stature, I think we're very comparable in terms of weight and height and reach. He's a great striker. He's a very patient striker, right? He's going to let you try to make a mistake. He's going to capitalize on that. He's got like a fair share of knockouts, but like don't sleep on his grappling and his ground game either. When he's been taken down, he's done a great job of getting back up. He's got great awareness in terms of the grappling art, and I think using his length and his patience, present some challenges to a lot of fighters. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a great matchup. Obviously, we've seen some things that we're looking to exploit and to try to capitalize on. But yeah, it's going to be a great matchup. I think I know what the UFC was trying to do with this fight. I think now at the heavyweight division, you want to see knockouts, you want to see violence, you want to see exciting fights. And I think you take my skill set, you take his skill set. I think you have the combination to have that.
So perhaps you're looking at this one as a fight that, ends inside the distance sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if it has to, I mean, listen, every single fight that I go into, I'm looking at it inside the distance. I always say that if you're a heavyweight, you can't finish a fight, then what are we doing? Much to the chagrin of my last fight against Robelis that went the distance. Like, I mean, it felt good to get the win, but I wasn't satisfied with that performance. So yeah, I'm gonna always look out to church. I try to get the finish. And if it puts myself in harm's way a little bit, I get punched in the face a couple times. It'll be nothing new, man. Let's go.
Yeah, it's just such an exciting time for I feel like the heavyweight division, like I feel like it's in a unique kind of position right now. Is that kind of like what you were saying before, almost like in terms of what like the matchmakers are maybe like looking to see out of the division or what they're doing with like the matchmaking in general and etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a time where, the heavyweight division, it was the king of the UFC. And maybe it's fallen apart a little bit. Maybe, we're getting a lot more skilled guys at, lower weight classes and everything. I think you see that in reflection in terms of the guys, the quality guys. Like, for instance, a guy like Jared Rosenstruck, who I trained with a lot at American Top Team. I mean, he went out against Sergey Pavlovich. It was a decision, and as far as I know right now, he didn't get re-signed in Rosenstruck. And this was a guy who was top 10. So yeah, like this is the fight game, but it's also the entertainment game. So the UFC is looking for knockouts. They're looking for exciting fights. And I understand that.
Did you have any thoughts on that Rosenstrike situation? Because I mean, I guess just speaking to my perspective, I did think it
Yeah.
was maybe a bit curious that he got released in a sense from what I could tell. Like that seems to be the case per the statement that he put out and everything. And then he was talking about the issues with like paint fumes in the venue, which I think other
Yeah.
fighters had echoed that same sentiment. So I guess just the totality of that situation. Like, did you have any thoughts on that at all?
Nah, I mean, yeah, obviously there's a lot of guys from Orlando that I know that were on that fight card too, that have spoke on those paint fumes and everything. I mean, yeah, man, I can't really speak on it. I wasn't there, obviously. But yeah, I was surprised that he didn't get re-signed because you look at his resume and everything. It is impressive, but at the end of the day, I guess you're only as valuable as your last fight is, and unfortunately, he didn't win his last fight, and I wish him nothing but the best because he's a solid dude and he helped me so much in fight camp. So you want to see him keep chasing that journey. Not to say he's not going to chase that journey because I think he's going to keep on fighting, just maybe not in the UFC anytime soon.
Oh yeah, definitely a talented guy. Like I'm sure he'll
Yeah.
find a spot really wherever and he'll be a coveted free agent. And this could also maybe fit under that same umbrella of not there, so can't speak on it. But I feel like I'd be
Mm-hmm.
remiss if I didn't get your thoughts on this kind of public discourse that's kind of happened with Eric Nicksick and Sean Strickland after UFC 312, presuming you've been following it a bit,
Oh
I
yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Eric was nothing but great towards me, man, and Sean, I got a lot of respect for as well. I always had respect for Sean because growing. Well, I was born in Chicago, but like grew up in Wisconsin, and like Sean reminds me of a lot of guys like from my town a little bit, right? So like, I think with Sean, man, he gets a bad rap sometimes for some of the things that he says, but if you see him in an MMA atmosphere in practice. He's always trying to help you out. He's going to make you work. But that's what MMA is, right? Like it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the casual. Like you have to be all in and you got to be a little crazy sometimes to do that sport. So I have a lot of respect for Strickland. As far as what happened with, Eric calling Strickland out, I mean, I'm not going to really speak on it because I wasn't really there for that camp or anything, and I hold both those guys in such high regard. I think Eric has kind of come out and I don't know if he apologized, but said like maybe he should have said some of those things. And from my understanding, I mean, they're still at that same gym, they're still going to work every single day. So, it happens sometimes in fighting, man, especially after a loss. Emotions are high, frustrations are high, but I hold both those guys in very high regard, and I don't really have anything bad to say about either of them.
Yeah, for sure. They both seem like they're right at the top of their respective roles in the space. But just, yeah, I
Yeah,
figured I'd be remiss if I didn't
yeah,
touch on it. But again, figured maybe you wouldn't have the insights
mhm,
per se because you've been at ATT as you articulated.
yeah.
But yeah, no, just interesting times, man, for sure. I guess like one of the big talking points, specifically with your weight category, that I'd be curious to get your thoughts on, because obviously the big talk is Jones and Aspinall for a
Yeah.
unification fight. I feel like some people have been kind of batting around the idea, like not anything official, but just in terms of like the rhetoric, discourse, etc., about maybe John Jones and Tom Aspinall having that big heavyweight title fight,
Mhm.
International Fight Week, something like that. Do you think we get that fight this calendar year at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, right? Because with the fight game, which is sports entertainment, like the longer you wait, the more you run the risk of it not being a great fight, right? Like sometimes fights happen way too late, whether it's boxing or MMA. And you have a guy right now in Tom Aspinall who obviously is the guy. You have a guy with John Jones who it's still fresh in our minds of what exactly he did against Cyril Gahn, right? So it's the old generation versus the new generation, and that story kind of sells itself, if you will. So yeah, I think the fight does happen. Obviously, I think it comes down to money and listen, that's going to be above my pay grade, how much it's going to be and everything like that. But I think eventually, like, it's all about making the right fight and the great fights. And Tom Aspinall and John Jones is probably the most anticipated fight that you can name right now. I think the UFC gets the job done.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, I'm kind of an optimist to a fault, so I think it's going to
Yeah,
happen. But yeah,
yeah.
be interesting to see how it pans out. And you kind of mentioned the, love for, Chicago, being that you were
Mm.
born in Illinois and everything. I'm curious to get some thoughts on a fellow Chicago individual, just because I've been seeing on social media you've been talking pro wrestling a little more. Like, what do you
Oh
see
yeah,
with,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, just with the whole CM Punk situation going to WrestleMania. See, it seems like the narrative is there for sure. Like, do you think he kind of gets that coveted WrestleMania main event spot and everything like that?
Yeah, so right now if we're talking about wrestling, it's like, listen, I'm not gonna doubt Triple H until he gives me a reason to. I mean, obviously a lot of things have fallen in line right now between Cody Rhodes and The Rock. Like, what's going on there? I'm gonna be honest, man. I think you can do a lot of things with CM Punk, and I'm not quite sure what picture he's gonna fill in to quite yet. You could do Seth Rollins, you could do Roman Reigns. If you're asking for my prediction, I think what's going to happen is I don't think CM Punk wins the Elimination Chamber. I'm not sure if John Cena wins it either. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in the Elimination Chamber, but what I think is going to happen is that CM Punk's going to ask for to cash in on that favor with Paul Heyman. Because if you remember when CM Punk helped the Bloodline out for that one night only, CM Punk said, "Hey, and I'm gonna have a favor for you down the line." And I mean, I don't know how much time we got here, man, but I can go into in depths in terms of just the psychology and everything. But what that reminds me of a lot in terms of that favor, it reminds me of Rocky 3. At the end of Rocky 3, when Apollo Creed said, "Hey, you still owe me that favor to Rocky," it was to get in the ring with him and do the favor. Well, if you know anything about CM Punk and Rocky and the fallout with AEW, you know that CM Punk was on record saying that he's never seen Rocky, and that
Yeah.
was a big mix-up between him and John Moxley, and that wasn't part of the fallout, but like that was a reason why there was kind of rumblings of why it wasn't working out. So then you take that, and then you go to WWE, and now all of a sudden we're using this verbiage of, "Hey, you owe me a favor, you owe me a favor." Well, that's Rocky 3. So a part of me wants to say that the whole story is going to be he's going to ask for that favor, and whoever Roman Reigns goes against, maybe CM Punk gets inserted as well to a triple threat at WrestleMania. I don't see it being a main event, but that could be a possibility. But yeah, man, it's the wrestling world's crazy right now, and I still think, and don't get me wrong, man, like we'll see with The Rock and everything, but I'm holding out hope that Jey Uso is going to rescind his match against Gunther, and The Rock's going to challenge him for the People's Champ. And that's going to be one of the main events. Because keep in mind, The Rock has the People's Championship belt. And we've seen Jey Uso and Gunther already. I want to see Jey Uso versus The Rock, right? The Rock comes out and says, "Hey, Jey Uso, you're getting all the crowd love here. I'm the real People's Champ." And that's how they go about their business.
Yeah, it's just such a fun time to be a wrestling fan. Like, there's just so much to speculate on. Like, there's so many tendrils of connectivity. Like, what even does
Mm-hmm.
that favor represent? Like, is this like the return of, Brock Lesnar, for instance, because of the Heyman
Yeah.
connection? Like, so many things could happen, it seems.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. And once again, like obviously we really can't see the sun through the trees right now. But listen, I trust in the storylines, I trust in the bloodline, I trust in Triple H because every time I start to question it, like, what are you guys doing here? They swerve me, they blow me away. I'm like, okay, I didn't even see that coming, but I'm glad that they did that. So uh we'll see what happens with The Rock, with Cody, with Roman, with the CM Punk, with Seth Rollins, but I have pretty high hope that it's going to be a good thing.
And I feel like that's when wrestling is at its best, like where there's a level of logical storyline progression, but kind of in concert with it being kind of like unpredictable. Like even just with the Royal Rumble, like I feel like Jey Uso winning caught a lot of people by surprise too. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, no, it does make sense. Like he goes by the main event moniker, so something like this will really get him to that spot even further or underscore it more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think especially with wrestling too, we live in an era now where like social media leaks, the dirt sheets and everything, they always report things before they actually happen, right? So it almost kind of ruins the moment of everything. And we see that even with like wrestlers coming out for like, if they've been on hiatus, like for instance, Charlotte Flair. Like Charlotte Flair we knew she was coming back to the Royal Rumble. Like, just think if we had no idea, like that would have been a bigger surprise, but we don't live in that world anymore. So anytime that you can kind of swerve an audience or think they're going to go one way, then you pivot the other way, that's a very special thing. We saw it with Jey Uso. I'm sure we'll see it with The Rock and Cody Rhodes, but like, that's what you have to do now. When people expect you to go right, you have to go left.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting time. Like, I don't know, there's a part of me that also wouldn't mind seeing, I guess, more crossover between like UFC and WWE, being that TKO owns both entities. Like, I kind of get why largely you would keep them as like separate products, but yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I wouldn't mind seeing a bit more, I don't know, crossover, like cross-pollination. A WWE guy maybe like even just attending a UFC event or being involved in a thing, or and then in the inverse, like maybe a UFC fighter getting to try out a pro wrestling match or something. I just feel like there's a lot of potential to be had there someday.
Oh no, without a doubt, man. Like, and I think you're going to see more and more that. Like, you've seen UFC fighters, in the crowd. You've seen Bilal Muhammad. You saw Alex Pereira. Yeah, so you're going to see a lot more crossover. I think that's what needs to be done because once again, it's the sports entertainment business, right? And you're trying to add more entertainment to the UFC side as well. So it only makes sense. And hey, if they want to bring me on as some kind of booker one day, I'm down to book some stuff, man, because I have some ideas.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could tell from how you described it there. I guess like
Mhm.
referencing a guy like Bilal Muhammad, who also really
Mhm.
puts on for Illinois. Like, is that something that even further serves to like fuel your own motivations to eventually get to like a championship kind of opportunity, like kind of be within that Illinois sort of lineage? Like, does that serve as like a
So,
driver or?
yeah, no, so it's funny, man, because like I was born in Illinois, but I probably claim Wisconsin more because I was really young when I moved out of Illinois. So I'm definitely was small town Wisconsin through and through. But now having been in Jacksonville, living in Jacksonville for 12 plus year, I mean, I consider Jacksonville my home, right? So um I want to put on for that city, right? Because I think Jacksonville, when you talk about the landscape of MMA, like you have Orlando, obviously you have South Florida, and Jacksonville's kind of been the area that's been a little bit neglected and forgot about sometimes. Even though now we have 5 UFC fighters from Jacksonville, spearheaded by Preston Parsons, who was the very first UFC fighter to be out of Jacksonville. But no, I want to do my part. I want to represent that city, and I want to keep putting on for Duval. So that's the goal going forward. The more wins that I get, obviously, Jacksonville is going to be right there with me as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a great market. Just, I mean, even with the whole state in general, I feel like
Mhm.
Florida has such connectivity to MMA at so many key points. And I know it's not exactly like Jacksonville at all, so I'm not tying it directly to that, but still cool to see
Yeah.
that UFC is coming back for 314 in April. Like it seems like they have some big fights already established with, Volkanovski versus Lopez and Chandler versus Pimblett. So just love to
Mhm.
see that.
No, without a doubt, man, for sure. Yeah, I mean, Florida's getting more and more love. And keep in mind, when it was the COVID time and things were rough. I mean, Jacksonville opened up the doors to the UFC. And the first couple of shows back with the UFC took place in Jacksonville. And I was at those shows. Wasn't the UFC yet, but I was at those shows. So, yeah, man, I think there's going to be a special spot in my heart, obviously for Jacksonville, and I think obviously for the UFC as well because Jacksonville did a lot for them during COVID.
It's interesting. Like, where did the I guess like connectivity to that extent would Jackson really pick up? Like, obviously, we're drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2010. Like, when did it really start to, I guess, resonate to you? Like, how much this is like a place you really want to put on for and whatnot?
Man, honestly, as soon as I got drafted back in 2010, just because, when you're going through the whole NFL process, you essentially got what? You got 30 cities that you can possibly live in because, New York's got 2 teams and everything. So there's 30 different cities, 30 different team or 32 different teams and 32 different ways that your life can go. Right. And then when I saw Jacksonville called me up and they drafted me, I was intrigued, had no idea about Jacksonville. I knew about the team, obviously, but didn't really know much about the city. And as soon as I got there, I felt right at home because I enjoy the beach, I enjoy the weather, but it's the people for me. And I think when you talk about South Florida, when you talk about Orlando and Tampa, a little more touristy, a little more flashy. You talk about Jacksonville, man. It's almost like the forgotten city. It's blue collar through and through. And it really reminds me a lot of like growing up in the Midwest, man, of just the type of people there. And you have all walks of life. So being by the beach, the weather, the people, it made complete sense. And I knew right away that it was going to be my home for a long time to come.
Well, it seems like the perfect in between in a sense. Like you get like the great weather and just the general environment that's physically there, but then just like the quality of the people as you outlined. So yeah, I love
Yeah.
to hear that you found that, man.
Yeah, without a doubt, man, because we're all products of our environment, right? So it's all about what you surround yourself with. And obviously when it comes to MMA training, I mean, I wish there's more heavyweights there to train with and everything. So unfortunately, I have to go to Vegas. I have to go to Coconut Creek. But in terms of being there, if you want to raise a family, if you're single, whatever the case may be, man, it's got a little bit of everything for you. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and you seem very focused on that dynamic as well. Like I feel like a lot of fighters will kind of like lean into the thing of being like, I don't know, purely like selfish in their pursuit of fighting, but it seems like you're also very mindful of, like you said, creating like a great environment for, your family to be within.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great to hear, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, I really think it's all about balance, right? And everyone, it's funny, man. All the time, people want to tell me, like, you don't really talk like you're a fighter. You don't seem like a fighter. I'm like, well, because you haven't seen me inside the cage, right? Like, I can turn it on and turn it off. And I think that's the most important part, right? Is fighting, the preparation, the training. It takes so much energy and effort just to even get in there, right? So I reserve that energy for those moments. But if I'm not in there, man, then I'm more just laid back, casual, and take things as they go. Like I I commend some of these fighters who try to turn it on the entire time and like I'm a badass, check me out, and like always making these videos and everything. Like more power to you, man. I think I just have the benefit of knowing exactly who I am, what I'm all about, the lessons that have been ingrained in me, and I'm very comfortable in my own skin, man. And I think when you have that, the rest of life is easy, right? So the training's hard, and fighting can be hard and everything. It's fun, but it's hard. But everything outside my life, man, I take with a grain of salt because I know exactly who I am.
Yeah, I love that, man. It's just so great. And I guess this is kind of like a last thing that I wanted to touch on because I remember in our previous talk, I referenced that you were into hockey. Like, did you catch that Four Nations game recently with Canada against, the US and
Oh
everything?
yeah, man. I think the only game I missed was the Sweden game against the US, but I saw every other game for the US, and I watched Sweden, Finland, watched Canada, Sweden. Yeah, I mean, dude, I watched a lot of that. That was fantastic. I hope the NBA is taking notes, man, because it should be NBA US versus the world. It's as sports, I'm a sports fan. Obviously, you're a sports fan too. I take it. It means something when the players care. It means something when the athletes care, right? And when you talk about that first Canada USA game where you got, the was it Matthew Kachuk starts the fight 7 seconds into the game, those guys care. Like that was supposed to be an all-star game. That was like an all-star showcase. And you got guys fighting. How can you not tune in to watch that? Right. So I hope going forward they keep on doing that Four Nations thing. Go ahead and add Russia. You can add the Czech Republic, whatever other teams you want, man. But I think that was a great thing. That was a great thing for hockey. Obviously, I think if Team USA would have won, I think that would even helped, the hockey brand in this country even more. Unfortunately, they didn't. Close battle. But overall, man, it got more eyes on the sport, and that's what they need right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There was a tangible energy in that finals for sure. And cool to see George St. Pierre involved, like the MMA connectivity point.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, listen, I think hockey gets slept on a lot, right? And I think the more opportunities that you can bring it to the spotlight, the forefront, because like I think 10.1 million people tuned in for the first Canada USA game. I'm not sure what the second game was, but like if you like that product, then watch the Stanley Cup. Like watch Stanley Cup playoffs because it's that exact intensity, right? It's that exact environment in terms of the crowd and everything, and just in terms of what's at stake. So, yeah, I just hope as a diehard hockey fan, I hope the sport keeps growing and growing.
Yeah, I think it very much will. And just really appreciate all the insights you've given me today, Austin. I figured I'd give you the floor, though, in case you had a final parting thought you were wanting to add as we're kind of wrapping up here. I appreciate you coming on Bowks Talking Bouts ahead of this Mario Pinto fight.
Yeah. Oh man, a closing dude. You put me on the spot here. I don't know if I've got any social media to plug. Like, yeah, just go and it's Austin with an E, so you can go and type my name in there and everything. You'll find some social media, but no, man, no really closing message, dude. I appreciate you giving me a platform to come on and kind of shoot the shit a little bit, man. It was a good time. Yeah, anybody listening, just please be well, be empathetic, be kind, and just keep living your life, man. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys.
Yeah, it's a great parting thought, and just, great time getting to talk to you ahead of this UFC Fight Night clash, which I'll be peeping on March 1st, certainly. But until then, Austin, you have a good rest of your day. All the best with the final stretch of preparations. And yeah, thanks so much, man.
Dylan, man, always a pleasure. Stay casual, and I'll see you when I see you, dude. Have a good one.